My adult sons told me that my wife was cheating on me. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I simply started acting. She began losing things, hearing things, forgetting things. Now she's in a mental hospital, and I'm sitting on my porch, smiling. Want to know how I did it? Watch the full story, to the very end. I was 64 years old when my entire world cracked open like a rotten egg. My wife Jane and I had been married for 38 years. We had what people call a good marriage, the kind people envy. We had 2 grown sons, Peter and Michael, both in their 30s, both successful, both with families of their own. Jane and I traveled, hosted holidays, laughed over wine in the evenings. If someone asked me 6 months ago what I thought of my marriage, I would have said I was lucky. Then came the whisper, not from Jane, but from our sons. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Peter had invited me over to his place to talk about something important. I figured it was about the new job offer he'd mentioned last week, or maybe something about the grandkids. But when I walked into his living room and saw both Peter and Michael sitting there, their expressions grim, my stomach tightened. Michael didn't waste time. "Dad," he said, "we need to tell you something, and we're only telling you because you deserve to know." I sat down slowly. Peter took over, his voice steady but careful. "We saw Mom last Friday, outside the Ridgeway Mall. She was in a car with a man we didn't recognize. She kissed him. It wasn't friendly, and we followed her. This wasn't a one-time thing. They've been meeting for a while." The words hit like a truck. For a moment I thought they were joking, some elaborate prank, but they weren't smiling. "She's been cheating on you, Dad," Michael added. "We're sure." Silence. I looked at my sons, 2 grown men who'd never lied to me before. I wanted to shout, deny, accuse them of making a mistake, but I couldn't. Something in their eyes told me it was true. I simply nodded, and something in me changed. Not the part that loved Jane. That part had already started dying without me knowing. No, what came alive was something colder, sharper, a need not just to confront, but to correct the balance. That day, a new man was born inside me, one who didn't believe in yelling or crying or breaking dishes, one who planned, one who would make his wife, the woman he'd trusted above all, regret everything. I didn't confront Jane. That would have been too easy for her. Instead, I waited. I watched her. Over the next few days, I noticed things I hadn't before. The way she smiled at her phone while cooking, the secretive texts she'd answer late at night, claiming it was her friend Marla, the new perfume, the gym membership she'd signed up for at 63. It was all there, right in front of me, like neon signs in a fog. That night, as she slept beside me, snoring lightly, I stared at the ceiling. Jane wasn't just cheating. She was lying to the man who had stood by her for nearly 4 decades, the father of her children, the man who buried his own parents with her at his side, who held her hand during surgery, who comforted her when her sister died. She had thrown it all away for a fling. And that's when my plan began to form. But before I could act, I had to make sure my sons were with me. The next evening, I called Peter and Michael to my house. We sat on the back porch where I used to grill steaks when they were boys. "I need you both to understand something," I said. "You didn't just tell me something painful, you gave me a gift. Now, I need your help." They looked confused. Michael frowned. "Help with what?" "Revenge," I said calmly. Peter blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, taking a long breath, "I'm going to make your mother regret what she did. But I'm not going to shout or throw her out or file for divorce. No, I'm going to let her life slowly unravel, quietly, piece by piece, until she breaks." Michael looked stunned. Peter swallowed hard. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked. "I'm not just sure," I said. "It's the only thing I want to do." And then I told them the first phase of the plan. We'd make her think she was losing her mind. Jane was always proud of her memory, her attention to detail. She prided herself on never forgetting birthdays, appointments, even where she left her reading glasses. So I started small. I'd move things, just slightly. Her hairbrush from the vanity to the guest bathroom, her car keys from her purse to the kitchen drawer. I reset her phone's wallpaper when she wasn't looking, just once, from a picture of us to a random stock image of the ocean. She asked about it. I shrugged. Must have been an update. She nodded, confused, but didn't press it. Next, I adjusted her car seat. Every night, just slightly closer to the wheel. She started to complain that her back was hurting more lately. Then, I forgot to tell her about her hair appointment. She missed it and got charged for a no-show. Then she misplaced a check she was supposed to mail because I had moved it from the hallway table to the garage. All small things, but they added up. Within 2 weeks, she was frowning more, muttering to herself, asking me if I noticed anything strange lately, if I'd moved anything. I always shook my head. "Maybe you're just tired," I said, patting her hand gently. "You've been a little forgetful lately." She smiled weakly. "Maybe I am." Meanwhile, I followed the man she was seeing. A balding, round-shouldered man in his late 50s, drove a navy sedan. I caught him dropping her off once, right around the corner from the house. His name was Ray. Ray worked at a nearby auto parts store and had a wife of his own, 2 daughters, a nice guy, according to his neighbors. I made a note of that. I wasn't going to just destroy Jane. Ray was going down with her. By week 3, Jane was visibly rattled. She'd started writing reminders on sticky notes and placing them around the house like breadcrumbs in a forest. One on the fridge, doctor's appointment Thursday at 3. One on the mirror, call Marla back. One on the coffee table, check oven before leaving. But the problem was, I kept removing them. Sometimes I'd move them. Sometimes I'd crumple one and throw it in the trash where she wouldn't notice right away, just enough to make her feel like she was losing her grip. One morning, she stood in the hallway staring blankly at the mirror. Her reflection looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen. She touched her cheek gently and whispered, "Something's wrong with me." From the kitchen, I responded calmly, "You've just been stressed. Maybe talk to a doctor." She nodded slowly, like someone hypnotized. That was the moment I knew. She'd started to believe the story I was writing for her. And that was just the beginning. I added a new phase, auditory illusions. I downloaded a Bluetooth speaker app on my phone and hid a tiny speaker behind her vanity. Every couple of days, when she was alone in the room, I played faint sounds, indistinct murmuring, barely audible footsteps, static. Nothing direct enough to identify, just unsettling. The first time, she froze mid-brushstroke and looked around. "Hello," she called. I muted the sound. Silence. A few days later, I played soft crying for 3 seconds while she was brushing her teeth. She walked out of the bathroom pale and quiet, said nothing to me all night. Meanwhile, I dug deeper into Ray. He had a routine. Monday through Friday, he worked from 9 to 5. On Wednesdays, he stopped by Jane's yoga studio around 7 p.m. They met in the back alley behind the building, talked for a few minutes, then she'd get in his car. They never drove far, mostly motels, sometimes to his friend's lake cabin, which he had a key to. Sloppy, predictable. I took pictures, lots of them. Ray holding her waist as they walked into the motel. Ray leaving the cabin with a duffel bag and her pink scarf around his neck. Ray adjusting her necklace outside his car. I had a digital album labeled Evidence, Final Act. But we weren't ready for the final act. Not yet. First, we had to make her break. I enlisted help from Michael. He worked in IT and knew just enough about email spoofing to pull off what I had in mind. Together, we created a fake Gmail account, raynamilla.confession@gmail.com, and used it to send a short email to Jane's inbox. Subject: we need to talk. Someone knows. She opened it at 6:27 p.m. on a Tuesday. I watched from across the room. Her face drained of color. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching her blink rapidly. She nodded. "Wrong email." The next day, we sent another. Subject: they've seen us. Check your car. That night, I placed a single Polaroid photo of her and Ray kissing, printed from a modern digital image but made to look old-fashioned, under her windshield wiper. She found it after her Pilates class. When she walked into the house, her hands were shaking. I pretended to be asleep on the couch, but I watched her stand in the hallway, clutching that photo like it might start bleeding. She didn't sleep that night. I know because I didn't either. She lay next to me, still as a statue, her breath shallow, flinching at every sound. The guilt was setting in, but guilt wasn't enough. I started whispering to her while she slept. Soft words, phrases she wouldn't remember consciously, but that might stick like burrs in her subconscious. "You're forgetting things. He knows. You're being watched." Sometimes I played faint footsteps in the hall just as she was drifting off. Other nights, I rearranged picture frames in the living room, so in the morning, she'd see that something had shifted, but wouldn't be able to explain why. She started taking sleeping pills. That's when I got bolder. One night, I moved her jewelry box into the refrigerator. She cried the next morning. "It's like I'm going crazy," she sobbed. I hugged her. "You're not crazy," I said. "You just need rest." She looked up at me with desperate eyes and whispered, "Do you think I should see someone?" I kissed her forehead. "I think that's a good idea." While Jane was unraveling, Ray was unaware of the firestorm brewing. But I hadn't forgotten him. One evening, while Jane was at book club, another rendezvous with Ray, I went to Ray's house and slipped a manila envelope into his mailbox. Inside, several photos. Him and Jane, motel receipts, a typed letter that read, "You think secrets stay buried, but some of us are very good at digging." I signed it, "Concerned Husband." That same week, I also sent a letter to Ray's wife, Susan. Anonymous, same photos, same message. 2 days later, Ray stopped showing up at the yoga studio. Jane noticed. I pretended not to. Then, phase 4, isolation. With Michael's help, I modified Jane's phone contacts. Her calls to Marla went to a disconnected message. Her emails to her sister mysteriously bounced. I even adjusted her Facebook settings so that new posts wouldn't appear to most of her friends. She started to feel alone. She started to panic. "Something's wrong with my phone," she said one afternoon. I took it, looked at it, handed it back. "Seems fine to me." She stared at me like she wasn't sure if I was lying or if she was truly losing her grip. Exactly what I wanted. One evening, Jane stood in front of me in the living room, trembling. "Paul," she said, "I think I'm having a nervous breakdown." I set down my book slowly and looked at her. "What makes you say that?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tears welled in her eyes. "I hear things. I forget things. People aren't answering me. I can't sleep. I think someone's watching me." I stood and took her hands. "Then maybe it's time to get help." She nodded, trembling. "Do you think I'm crazy?" I pulled her into a hug. "No," I whispered. "I think someone hurt you deeply, and your mind is trying to protect you from it." And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She was starting to suspect herself. By the end of week 5, she asked me to drive her to a psychiatrist. I agreed, like a loving husband. I even sat in the waiting room for 2 hours while she poured her heart out. When she came out, she looked dazed. "He gave me medication," she said quietly. "That's good," I replied. "You'll get better." She smiled faintly, but it was hollow, like something in her had cracked. And all I had to do now was push. Jane started taking the pills immediately. They made her slower, foggy. She began forgetting full conversations, asking the same questions twice in one evening. Sometimes she'd lose her train of thought halfway through a sentence. I'd gently finish her thoughts for her, encouraging her confusion, reinforcing the idea that something was wrong, but not with the world, with her. I even moved the labels on her pill bottles once, just once. Swapped the sleeping aid with her anxiety meds. She called the psychiatrist the next morning, saying the pills were making her hallucinate. He adjusted the dosage. She apologized to him 3 times during that call, though she didn't really know why. Her reality was becoming slippery. Perfect. Meanwhile, I kept the pressure on Ray. His wife had thrown him out after receiving the envelope. I know this because I paid a neighborhood teenager $50 to stake out Ray's house under the pretense of a high school photography project. He told me Ray packed a suitcase and left at 11 p.m. Suitcase in one hand, a duffel bag in the other. But Ray made a mistake. He came to see Jane. It was a Wednesday night. I was upstairs, pretending to sleep. Jane had been on edge all day, pacing, barely eating. She hadn't spoken to me beyond a few muttered answers. I knew something was coming. I felt it in the air. Then I heard the knock at the door. I peeked through the hallway window. It was him. Ray stood on our porch, looking haggard, nervous. Jane answered the door quietly and stepped outside. I recorded the whole thing from the guest bedroom window. He tried to hug her. She pulled away. They argued in hushed tones. Then Jane said something that made my stomach twist, even though I knew she was too far gone now to change course. "They know," she hissed. "Someone knows. They're watching me, watching us." Ray shook his head. "What are you talking about?" "You don't get it," she snapped. "I'm hearing voices. Things are moving in the house. My phone is broken. My pills are wrong. I think I'm losing my mind." Ray grabbed her shoulders. "Jane, you're not crazy. You're just..." But she pulled away, looking terrified. "I can't see you anymore. It's not safe. It's not normal. I'm not normal anymore." She went inside. Ray stood there for a few minutes, stunned. Then he left. It would be the last time they saw each other. 2 days later, Jane asked me to help her check the attic. "For what?" I asked, pretending to be puzzled. She rubbed her temples. "I keep hearing something up there. Footsteps. Like someone walking. I know how it sounds, but please, Paul, just check." I climbed the ladder, looked around, made a show of examining every box. Then I called down. Nothing. No one. Just dust and memories. She nodded but didn't look reassured. That night, she cried in the shower, and I smiled in the dark. With Jane fully unraveling, it was time for the next phase, planting doubt in her social circle. I used a burner phone and texted her best friend, Marla. The message was simple. "You should ask Jane why she's been sneaking around with Ray Miller. Wonder what her husband would think." 2 hours later, Marla called Jane. I didn't hear the full conversation, but I caught enough through the bedroom door. Shouting, crying, Jane screaming, "It's not what you think," and then throwing the phone across the room. She didn't answer any calls for 2 days after that. I made sure her phone started glitching that week too. Michael helped me install a buggy system update that made her apps crash at random. She asked me to take it in for repairs. I said I would. I never did. Just another piece of her reality falling apart. Jane became paranoid. She started asking questions she used to ignore. "Do you think someone's in the house? Did you hear that noise last night? Did you change the Wi-Fi password? Did you see my necklace? It was right here. I always gave the same answer. No, honey, I didn't touch anything. She stopped trusting herself. She started talking in whispers, locking doors, checking windows. She called the psychiatrist again. This time, he recommended inpatient observation. Just a few nights, he said, to reset, to rest. She resisted at first, but after waking up one morning to find her wedding ring in the freezer, yes, I put it there, she agreed. I drove her to the facility myself. It was a quiet building, white walls, kind smiles, and soft music in the lobby. She clutched my arm the entire time, whispering, "Please don't leave me here too long." I nodded. "You just need to rest," I told her. She looked back at me as the staff gently led her inside, eyes wide, like a little girl afraid of the dark. And then she was gone, locked away, believing she'd gone mad. Mission accomplished, but I wasn't done, because madness wasn't enough. I wanted her to know, to understand, not just that she was broken, but who broke her. So I waited 1 week. Let her settle in. Let the medication fog her brain. Then I sent her a letter, typed, unsigned, but very, very clear. You were never crazy. You weren't hallucinating. The photos were real. The whispers were planted. The objects were moved. The sounds were played. The people who stopped talking to you were told. The man you cheated with is gone. This wasn't a breakdown. This was justice. You broke something that can't be fixed. So I broke something in return. I let others do the work, but every hand was guided by mine. I'm not coming to visit. I'm not coming to forgive. I hope you enjoy the silence, because you created it. I mailed it to her through the facility's public delivery box. No return address. 3 days later, I received a call. It was the hospital. Jane had suffered what they described as an acute psychological collapse. She kept screaming, "He knows! He knows! He's watching me!" They had to sedate her. Jane stayed in the facility for 3 weeks after the collapse. The doctors called it an acute paranoid episode, likely exacerbated by psychological stressors and emotional trauma. They increased her dosage, switched her to new medication. She barely spoke for days. When she did, it was in fragments. He was here. He moved it. He knows everything. No one knew what she meant. No one, except me. Back at home, I began erasing her. Slowly, quietly. First came the photographs, the frames on the mantle, family vacations, holidays, anniversaries. I removed each one and replaced them with pictures of the boys and me, and the grandchildren. I boxed hers up, labeled them storage, and shoved them in the attic where she would never look again. Next, her clothes. I donated 2/3 of her wardrobe to a local shelter. Kept only what she wore most often, just enough so she wouldn't notice right away. Then, the bedroom. I swapped our comforter for a darker one, rearranged the drawers, bought new curtains. A subtle shift, but intentional. So when or if she came back, it would feel unfamiliar, unwelcoming, like she no longer belonged here, because she didn't. Michael and Peter visited often during those weeks. Peter brought the kids. Michael helped me sort paperwork, bank accounts, wills, passwords. "You really think she's going to come back?" he asked one night, sipping a beer on the porch. I shrugged. "Eventually, but she won't be the same. And if she does, she'll wish she hadn't." He didn't ask for more details. I think, deep down, both my sons had accepted what I'd done. Maybe they didn't know the full extent. Maybe they suspected. but they never asked, and I never told. Some things are better buried. After 24 days, the hospital called again. Jane had stabilized. The psychiatrist believed she was ready for supervised release. She could return home under observation and continue treatment as an outpatient. They asked if I was comfortable with that. I said yes. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? The day I picked her up, she looked like a ghost. Her skin was pale, her hair thin and unkempt. She was wearing the same beige cardigan I'd seen her wear 10 times over the years, but it now hung loose on her frame like a hospital gown. When she saw me, her lips trembled. "Paul," she whispered. I helped her into the car without a word. The drive home was quiet. She didn't ask any questions. She barely looked out the window. When we pulled into the driveway, she froze. "Something's different." I helped her out of the car. "You've been gone a while." Inside, she walked through the house like a stranger in a museum. She stopped in the hallway where the family portraits used to be. "Where are the pictures?" I shrugged. "I needed space. We're starting fresh." She nodded slowly, but her eyes filled with tears. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. For the first 2 weeks, Jane slept in the guest room. I made no move to stop her. She cooked meals, cleaned, took her pills, sat silently through dinners while I watched the news, and made casual conversation she never joined. She was obedient, but haunted, exactly how I wanted her. Then came the dream. One night I woke to the sound of whimpering. Not crying, not talking, whimpering. I crept down the hallway and cracked the door to the guest room. Jane was curled in bed, clutching a pillow, her eyes wide open, whimpering like a dog that had been beaten. She didn't even notice me. I closed the door quietly. That's when I realized she'd never be the same again. Not even close. I had broken her spirit. Not just her heart, not just her trust, but the piece of her that once believed she was in control. Now she belonged to fear, to silence, to me. She tried apologizing once. It was over coffee. Rain drizzled against the kitchen window. We hadn't spoken in 3 days. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice flat. "I betrayed you. I betrayed our family." I stirred my coffee slowly. She continued, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make things right." I looked up, stared into her eyes. "You can't make it right, Jane. There is no right. There's just what's left." She nodded. That was the last time she tried. But even I underestimated how far the fall would go. Because a week later, Jane stopped speaking altogether. Not just to me, to everyone. She wouldn't answer the phone, wouldn't speak to Peter or Michael, wouldn't respond to her therapist. She spent her days wandering the house in silence, folding clothes, washing dishes, watering already dead plants. It was like she had shut the world off. I began to worry, not out of guilt, but logistics. If she stopped functioning altogether, what was the point? I needed her to live in that prison, to be conscious of it. So I adjusted. I lightened the pressure, took her on a drive to her favorite lake, let her play with the grandchildren during a supervised visit, gave her back a little light. Not mercy, strategy. The deeper the pit, the more powerful the illusion of hope. And that hope would shatter soon. Because now, it was time to reveal everything. I waited for the right moment. It had to be quiet, ordinary, a day like any other. Because sometimes the biggest earthquakes don't come with sirens, they come with silence. It was Sunday morning. Jane was sitting on the back porch wearing that same beige cardigan, the one she clung to now like armor. She sipped weak tea and stared into the trees. Her eyes didn't blink much anymore. Like blinking would mean waking up from whatever limbo she had accepted. I walked out with an old shoebox, set it on the table in front of her. She blinked. Once. "What's this?" "A gift," I said. "For what?" "For the years you lied to me. For the man you kissed behind the bakery. For every time you looked me in the eye and said, 'I love you,' when all you really meant was, 'I love what you think I am.'" Her hand trembled as it hovered over the box. "Open it," I said softly. She did. Inside were printed photos. Grainy, black and white, time-stamped. Jane and Ray. Jane leaving motels. Ray's hand on her waist. Envelopes. A copy of the anonymous letter I'd mailed to her in the facility. Her breath caught in her throat. And then she looked at me, eyes wide, jaw trembling. It was you," she whispered. I nodded. "All of it?" she asked. "Every word, every sound, every lost item, every broken contact, every whisper in the night, every doubt you had about your sanity. That was me, Jane." She covered her mouth. Tears began to fall. Not weeping, shaking, soundless tears. "You destroyed me," she finally said. I leaned back in my chair. "No, you destroyed us. I just showed you what that felt like. I was sick. I wasn't thinking. Save it. You had choices. I gave you loyalty. You gave me betrayal. Now we're even. But the hospital, the pills. You ever try to gaslight a man who's been loyal for 38 years? I said. Try watching him turn that gaslight into a forest fire. She slumped forward. I can't come back from this. I stood. You were never supposed to. And I walked away. For the next week, Jane barely left her room. She refused to eat more than a few bites. She stopped dressing properly, stopped answering phone calls. She spoke once to Michael, only to ask if I was planning to divorce her. Michael, bless him, answered, "You're lucky he doesn't bury you." I consulted a lawyer, of course, not to leave her, but to ensure that everything, every asset, every inheritance, every property, was airtight in my name. I transferred funds, separated accounts, created an ironclad will that excluded her from everything except the basics of survival. She would never touch another dollar of mine, not for betrayal, not for pity, not for legacy. Then I did the final thing she never expected. I forgave her, not to her face, in a letter. I placed it on her pillow one morning before going fishing. It read, "Jane, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, not because it heals anything, but because forgiveness is the final victory. I took your sanity. I took your lies. I took your dignity. And now I take back the only thing you once had power over, my heart. I no longer hate you. You are simply nothing." When I returned that evening, the letter was gone. Jane was sitting at the kitchen table. Her tea was cold. She looked up slowly. "I don't want to live like this." "Then don't." She stared at me. "I mean it," I said. "You want to go. I'll give you the house, the car, a small allowance, but you disappear. No more calls, no more holidays, no more pretending." She said nothing for a long time. Then she nodded. "I'll go." 2 weeks later, she moved into a one-bedroom apartment near the edge of town. Peter helped her carry boxes. Michael didn't show. She didn't take much. Some clothes, her books, a few photo albums she didn't realize were missing pages. I didn't help. I watched from the porch as she drove away. Her eyes never met mine. Good, because I wanted her to remember my silence more than any of my words. Jane disappeared from my life like a ghost with no unfinished business. No goodbyes, no letters, no phone calls, not even an attempt to explain things to the grandchildren. She knew, or maybe accepted, that she had no place left in the family she once thought would forgive anything. And that was the worst punishment of all. Because people can survive betrayal, but indifference, that's what truly breaks them. It's been 8 months since she left. People in town still ask about her from time to time. I give polite answers. She's living quietly now. We're not in touch. Some people nod and change the subject. Some press harder. But most, especially the older ones, the ones who've known me and Jane for decades, just give me a look, a knowing look, as if they've heard things, as if they suspect things, but no one ever says it out loud. And I never confirm anything. That's the beauty of carefully planned revenge. When it works, it doesn't need explanation. It becomes legend. Peter and Michael visit more often now. They bring the grandkids. We fish, we grill steaks, we talk politics, joke about football, discuss old stories they only half remember from childhood. They never ask about their mother. Once Peter started to, mid-sentence, but stopped himself. Instead, he said, "You doing okay, Dad?" I smiled. Better than I've ever been. I started volunteering again, at the local library, at the VFW hall. I even helped coach Little League, mostly just handing out water bottles and watching the kids struggle with grounders. It feels good to be seen again, to be useful, to be visible. Jane had made me feel invisible near the end. And now I'm the man people wave to on the street, the one who brings fresh corn to Sunday potlucks, the one who doesn't raise his voice, who doesn't gossip, who doesn't look broken. That too is part of the victory, because I rebuilt myself from the ashes. And she, well, last I heard, Jane was in therapy 4 times a week, still on medication, still unable to hold a full conversation for long. She doesn't drive anymore. The neighbors say she talks to herself on her balcony sometimes, always in whispers, like someone might be listening. She keeps her curtains closed during the day and sleeps with the lights on at night. One day, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name, handwritten in shaky script. I knew who it was from before I even opened it. Inside was a single page. "Paul, I see your face in everything. The shadows under the trees, the static on the radio, the silence when I wake up. I know what you did, and I know I deserved it. But please, let me forget. Please. Jane." I burned the letter in the fire pit behind the house. No reply. No need. She doesn't get peace. Not after what she did. And certainly not from me. Do I regret it? No. Regret is for people who made mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. It was a response. A mirror held up to a woman who chose deception over love. A lesson taught in silence, in whispers, in ghosts that don't go away. And every now and then, just every so often, I walk past the guest room where she once slept after the breakdown. I pause. Look at the untouched bed, the old beige cardigan still folded on the edge of the chair, and I smile. Because justice, when done right, doesn't need applause. It just needs silence. And I've never heard silence so loud.